November the 12th. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Chambers hasn't arrived yet. I don't know that he's coming. And Councillor Oakley is on screen. So that takes care of attendance, which takes us to number 2 on the agenda, which is the land acknowledgement. I believe Councillor Coleman has that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, 6 nations of the Grand River, and the traditional territory of the Andarok. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We recognize the significance of their contributions to the past, present, and the future of this land. As a county, we have a shared responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work, and a commitment to the truth and reconciliation calls to action. We commit to continue learning and reflecting on our past and working in allyship.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Takes us to number 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda? I have, Councillor Kyle?
I have 2 quick items under other business.
Other business, thank you. I'm going to add something under 7.1, please, which is just the clerk announcing the public meeting protocol just before we go into public hearings. So that'll be 7.1. Anything else? Councillor Howes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell that the County of Brant Council agenda and addendum for November 12th, 2024 be approved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 4 is pecuniary interest. Does anyone have one? Councillor Kyle?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, when we get to bylaw 17.1.
17.1. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Delegations. We have delegations for most of our items tonight. So we'll go on to number 6, which is adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor McAlpine, you have that?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Oakley that the County of Brant Council minutes of October 8th, 2024 be approved.
All those in favor of the minutes? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to number 7, which is business arising from the minutes. Does anyone have anything that comes up under the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7.1. Mr. Clerk.
Through your worship, so for the public meeting protocol, this meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. Planning items are heard at public planning meetings twice. The first meeting is for information and discussion purposes only. This means no decisions will be made at the meeting. It is a second meeting, subsequent hearing, that the County of Brant Council will make decisions on items that have previously been heard. This meeting is being live streamed to the county's YouTube channel, and a recording of this meeting will be available on the channel after the meeting has concluded. The agenda of the meeting can be found online at brant.ca. Planning items can be complex. As such, they can draw a wide range of opinions from the community and its many stakeholders. We know that not everyone will agree on these topics. However, we ask everyone to please be respectful. Cheering, clapping, or booing are not permitted. Failure to comply with this may result in your removal from council chambers by bylaw staff. We will remind everyone here that those who have registered in advance will be permitted to speak first. Registered delegations may be attending in person or virtually through Zoom. Registered delegations attending in person will be heard from first, followed by registered Zoom delegations. Once all registered delegations have had the opportunity to speak, we will invite unregistered delegations to speak at the podium. Delegations have 10 minutes each to make their presentation, and we will have a timer set for your benefit located just over there. If in-person delegations have provided a presentation to be shared at this meeting in advance, it'll be available at the podium for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that being said, we'll take number 8 on the agenda, 8.1, which is 304 East River Road. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor, please? Councillor Pierce and Councillor Coleman. And at this point, I will declare this a public meeting, and I'll declare the meeting open. And I will call on Denise Landry to come up and to give her presentation, please. And again, you can just keep an eye on the timer there. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Denise Landry, and I'm a principal planner with Nethery Planning. And I'm here with my colleague, Joe Nethery, who's the founder and principal of Nethery Planning. Our company was retained by the county a few months prior to assist with reviewing development applications and providing recommendations on behalf of the County of Brant Planning Department. The purpose of today's meeting is for council to receive information on a zoning bylaw amendment application and to receive comments from members of the public. Nethery Planning, on behalf of planning staff, are not presenting a recommendation report at this time. A recommendation report will be brought forward to a future council meeting for consideration. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted by Matt Reiners and Associates on behalf of the owner, Kelly Vandenberg, with KCVP Incorporated for the property municipally known as 304 East River Road. The subject lands are outlined in a blue rectangle and are located along East River Road, north of Scenic Drive in Ward 1. Rural residential dwellings are located north and south of the subject property, with agricultural lands to the east and an equestrian center to the west. The subject lands were created through the consent process and received conditional approval from the Committee of Adjustment in 2021. The subject lands were subsequently rezoned to accommodate the minimum distance separation requirements between the equestrian center and the subject lands. The rezoning also restricted development along the rear of the property to protect the existing woodlot. The intent of having minimum distance separations is to prevent land use conflicts between livestock facilities and more sensitive land uses such as residential dwellings. The intent is also to minimize nuisance complaints from odors. The applicant is requesting to reduce the street setback to 20 meters, where the current zoning requires a setback of 49.4 meters along the north property line and a setback of 75 meters along the south property line. This would reduce the minimum distance separation from 208 meters to 160 meters. The subject property is approximately 0.4 hectares in size and is currently vacant with a woodlot to the rear of the property. The subject lands are designated rural residential and natural heritage system in the county's 2012 official plan. As council is aware, but for those in the gallery or online who may not know, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing approved the county's new 2023 official plan on October 18th, 2024. As the subject application was deemed complete prior to the approval of the new official plan, the application will be reviewed under the 2012 official plan. The subject lands are zoned rural residential with site-specific special exception requirements that deal with the minimum distance separation requirements to the equestrian center. As mentioned on a previous slide, the subject application proposes to reduce the north and south property line setbacks to 20 meters from the street. If approved, the application would result in a reduced minimum distance separation setback from 208 meters to approximately 160 meters. The notice of complete application and public meeting was circulated to property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands as per the Planning Act. To date, staff have received several written comments in support of the application, and one member of the public expressed their opposition to the application verbally. The full set of comments received to date are included in the agenda package for tonight's meeting. To reiterate, tonight's meeting is only to receive information on the subject application and hear from members of the public. No recommendation is being brought forward at this time. The Nethery Planning team, on behalf of County Planning staff, anticipate bringing forward a recommendation report for Council's consideration at the December 3rd, 2024 Council meeting. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to address any comments that Council has. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Rayner here to speak? Do you want to come up and speak too? Thank you very much for your presentation. Oh, you got it. Can you come up here, please? Yeah. We'll take questions after. If you could state your full name and your address, please, for the clerk.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, I don't think that mic's on.
Oh, there it is.
There
Sorry.
we go.
Okay.
Mayor Bailey and members of County Council, just for the record, my name is spelled incorrectly on the, it's Reniers. Reniers is the pronunciation. I'm used to having it misspelled and mispronounced. It's no problem. I'll try to be brief. I'm the planner working for KVCMP on this application. The owner, Cal Vandenberg, has another commitment tonight, and he is attending virtually, but he can't be here in person. Also with me is Matt Robillard from Soil Solutions Plus, who has done the MDS calculations for 304 East River Road. I'd like to begin by thanking county, or I'm not sure if it's county staff or Netherly Planning who prepared the presentation material, but it's well done. I'm wondering if you could go, I don't know who's in charge of it, but go back to slide 3. So one that shows the, one, that's the slide there. Thank you. That shows basically the predicament that the owner is in. The hatched green area on the slide on the diagram to the right is the developable area, and it's set back quite a distance. Ms. Landry had explained the distance separation or the distance setbacks already. So it's pushed very far back in the property, and with the effect that any new house on the property would be to the rear of existing houses to the south of the property. We've requested a zoning amendment to 20 meters from a setback of 20 meters, which is basically it is the standard rural residential setback. The homes to the south of the property are in the RR zone there's not a specialized zone for them. They are set back further than the setback to comply with the 160 meter calculation. Because the homes that have been built on the property now, the number of homes along the east side of East River Road, the MDS guidelines now require an MDS 1 type B calculation, which increases the distance from the horse barns located across the road at 301 East River Road. So the requirement now is for this property is for the house to be set much further back than its neighboring properties, even though it's further away from the horse barn. If the same calculation of 160 meters was applied to the property, it would really only just skirt the southwest corner of 304 East River Road and would not have impacted the development of the property. The owner has had inquiries about the purchase of that property for a new home, but it's the increased setback is a deterrent, and no one has come forward to actually purchase the property. It's a real impediment for developing that lot. So that is why he has requested the zone change. I don't know if, well, on the aerial photograph, you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the subject property. The horse barn is across the street with the white grayish roof, and across the road, much closer to it, are the two houses, and then the subject property. So I think now I'll just turn it over to Matt Robillard to talk about the MDS calculations and the guidelines. Thank you.
Matt Robillard. I attended the site December of 2020. Observed the livestock that was there in the barns. I had a telephone call with the owner and discussed the livestock, and that gave me the information I needed to come up with the setback. And this is a type B setback because it's now 4 houses together, which is a double distance setback. It's, in my opinion, the most evil of setbacks because it's not really based on what the intent of the original founder desired for the setbacks, but because it's a more sensitive use, it does get that treatment, and we have to respect that. It is that distance. The MDS calculations, the document gives us suggestions of when it's appropriate for us to look for reducing the setbacks, and ones that apply to this one here found in implementation guideline number 43. The question, is the proposed development similar to others on surrounding lands in the vicinity? And yes, the 2 residents to the south are both zoned rural residential, and they are single family homes that would be parallel to the proposed house. Is the proposed location further away from the surrounding livestock facility than the other development or dwellings in the area? And again, yes. The 2 residences to the south are both closer to the livestock barn, and the 3rd residence south of the livestock barn is even closer to that. Is there a history of complaints in the area related to odor? And the answer to that is no. The neighboring properties have provided letters of support that confirms there's no odor issues present. All of the neighboring houses meet or exceed the required MDS setbacks by considerable distances. Are there natural or environmental features on the lot that should be considered? And the answer here is yes. There's woodlands at the back. Is this proposed development a logical extension of the existing development? And yes, it's clear that the neighbors are expecting the new house to be constructed in line with the residences that have already been cited according to the formula. The important thing here is to make sure that the decision that the council comes with is following the intent of the MDS document. And the intent of the document is to prevent land use conflicts and minimize nuisance complaints from odor. The livestock barn across the road from this application has 3 neighboring houses that are closer. They were all constructed to meet the type A setbacks, and no issues are present. The original placement of the proposed house met the type B setback, which is why we're here today. And the application has these limited site circumstances that need to be considered for it. The application really is consistent with the intent of the MDS guidelines. And if you have any questions on the MDS, I'm available for that.
Okay, before we go any further, Mr. Robillard, I don't see your name on our agenda. You're working on behalf, obviously, of the applicant?
Yes.
And you're employed by?
My company is Soil Solutions Plus.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for any of the presenters? Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. So while you're up there, I guess I'll start with the MDS. Just to confirm, you said this has to have a type B MDS setback because there's now 4 houses? Is that what you said?
So yes, MDS likes to restrict areas where there's communities and there's more people together. And the type B setbacks is intensified areas where people are together. So if you were to start a small a hamlet, you'd want to keep your livestock farm further away from it. And that's the original intent. Here, where we have 4 houses together, The livestock operation is actually on the other side of it, and the other three houses are closer. So I really don't think it meets the intent of what we're trying to do with the type B setback. And like I say, it's an impediment when we're planning to site livestock facilities anywhere near towns or community settlement areas or hamlets. Yes.
So follow up, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to be clear on the four houses here. So on the side of the street, I guess it's what it would be on the west side, I guess it is, maybe. I see three houses there now in that lot. So because this is the fourth house, it does something different.
Yes, because it's the fourth house, it meets that definition. And that is up to the county to interpret the MDS in the way they feel appropriate. And that's really how we're at this application, is that definition applicable here.
Okay, I appreciate that. And Mr. Mayor, I got a question for the first presenter as well, if I could.
Okay.
Thank you. So just for clarification, I want to confirm that I heard you correctly. You said this application will go by the 2012 official plan because it was deemed complete prior to the approval of the new OP, correct? Okay, can you just put that?
Oops, clicked wrong. Through the worship to the counselor, that is correct.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, you're next.
A few questions. I'll start with the planner first because she's up there. Just to be clear, this is going to the Agricultural Committee, Advisory Committee later this month?
Through your worship to the counselor, we did meet with the Agricultural Committee earlier this month, or actually, sorry, the end of October. We do intend on going back as they had a few questions for the team to address. So we will be going back to the committee at the end of the month to address those questions. And that information will be included in our recommendation report.
Okay. While I got you there, I've read letters from the neighbors in our package. Did we hear anything from the horse farm across the road?
Okay, you can't speak from the audience. It's an open meeting, so after the three registered delegations, you're welcome to come up and speak at the podium so we can all hear what you have to say. Thank you. Continue, please.
Through your worship to the counselor, my understanding is that staff did speak with a member of the public who owns the equestrian center, and that they are opposed to the application.
Okay, so we haven't heard. We as the committee haven't heard yet. Okay. In looking at the application as it stands now, it can go ahead as long as it's pushed back. That's correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Through your worship to the counselor, there was a plan that did show a dwelling location on the property, and it did show that a dwelling could fit within the area outside the setbacks.
Okay. And if it does that, then we are looking at extending their driveway for a future house if we did that another at least 30 meters, correct?
Through your worship to the counselor, yes, the driveway would have to extend to reach the property, which would be located kind of further back, quite a bit further back than the proposed 20 meters.
If you're shoveling snow by hand, that can really add up. And then the last question is just on the MDS, the calculations. At the end of the day, the MDS are just guidelines. I should say just guidelines, but they are guidelines.
Yes, through your worship to the counselor, yes, the province does have guidelines to assist with assessing applications. The guidelines do also speak to how to undertake the calculations. But yes, they are guidelines.
And the calculations were based on the size of the barn or the current number of animal units there?
Through your worship to the counselor, it would be both, would be looked at in terms of the calculation.
Okay, so for the 160 meters, which one did you go with? You said you went with both and they both come up to 160 meters?
I would probably pass it off to the individual behind me who actually prepared the calculation to discuss that further.
And that's my last question, so I'll thank you ahead of time.
The calculation is based on the livestock that are present on the farm, how many box stalls the farm can have, and the type of livestock that are there. And in this case, they're small framed horses, and that's where the setback is based off that livestock there.
Any other questions? Councillor Coleman, you're next, and then Councillor Kyle. Oh, Councillor Kyle's first.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I'm thinking maybe our gentleman from Soil Solutions, but I'm just wondering in terms of the MDS, so you use the existing livestock to make your calculation, but let's say in 5 or 10 years, the folks that own that farm either move or they change their mind and they want to have cattle or sheep or some other form of livestock. How does that impact, like if this decision is made, does that impact or limit them to switch the type of livestock that they're using?
So they have the reverse calculation in that case. So there's MDS1 and MDS2. And if a new owner decides to have livestock there, they apply for a building permit. And we do the MDS2 calculation, which is essentially the reverse calculation of how it's set up. In this case, the calculation is based off the closest house to where they are going to build something. So we also have 3 other houses that are closer, which the distance would be based off of those houses, not this house.
Councillor Kyle.
So quick follow up to that. So if they were going to use the existing facilities, the current horse barn, and they were going to put Angus cattle in there, do they, and they're not theoretically going to have to apply for a building permit, how does that work? Are they unable to have that livestock there because it would be a different calculation, or how does that work?
Realistically, nobody's going to put Angus cattle in a horse barn. It's just not practical. And for that type of an expansion, you're going to want more supporting infrastructure like manure storages because there's none on this farm. So you will need a building permit for that type of intensification of that farm. You would have to do these calculations at that point.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my question was very similar to what Councillor Kyle was, so it's been answered, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor McAlpine.
This is a little different vein. I'm wondering, East River Road, we have very limited shoulders on them. So in the future, if we're planning to widen that road by allowing that 20-meter distance, is that going to limit the ability for us to do that in the future?
Mayor, I'll answer. Through the mayor to the councillor. So if there was concerns about road width, it should have been acquired at the time we took the severance, and we should have taken a road widening. So at this point, I would say that there's probably not a concern right now, but if in the future we needed some land, the house would be set back 20 meters, there's still plenty of room that we could take some additional land with probably impacting this property whatsoever in the house. 20-meter setback if it was granted.
Thank you. Are there any other questions to the presenters? Councillor Bell.
Not so much to the presenters, but to staff in relation to an answer we got earlier. I think I understood from Denise that this application would be assessed against on the basis of the old OP. Last time we had one of these meetings, we had another application in front of us, and I think I heard almost the reverse, and I'd appreciate staff clarifying that.
The mayor to Councillor Bell. So I think the previous application referring to was one here in Paris. So the current transition policies we had in place and the rules from the province said that because we were waiting for our plan to be approved, they could apply under the new official plan. And that was an opportunity they were afforded because our plan was approved by council, waiting for the province to give final approval. So they could apply for it under the new official plan, and they had to wait for the zoning to come into place once the official plan came into place. And they took that risk. If the official plan wasn't approved or impacted their application, they could lose their zoning, for example, that might have been approved. In this case, where the application is received prior to the date of the approval of our new official plan, they didn't need to go under the current new official plan. They were using the old official plan, so they had to use that unless they asked us to use a new plan. It's not a big deal one way or the other to this extent because the MDS applied in either case and in our policies. So they were afforded the same opportunity, but or applied before the new plan came into place, so they used the old OP.
Yeah, I agree that in this case it doesn't make much difference. In the case we heard last time around, it did make a difference. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you all for coming. And this part of the meeting, we're going to open it up to the 3 delegations that have registered. The first one being Jane Southgate. And again, if you could just give us your address, please, for the clerk.
Okay then. Jane Southgate, 301 East River Road. I have the horse farm that we're talking about, which is currently zoned agriculture as part of Lot 1, Concession 4. Just a little bit of brief history. The farm was originally part of the Kelman property, which actually includes the gravel pit, which is below my farm that is now owned by the county. I purchased 15 acres back in April 1989. Subsequently, I purchased an additional 5 acres from the county, which is still zoned incorrectly as extraction. I asked in 2021 during the review of the official plan whether I could change the designation to rural residential, as it would increase the value of the land when we decided to sell. I was told no, as the province didn't want any reduction in agricultural land. The lots across from me, there was one that they did a bit of fudging to get within the MDS. So now the current applicant, who now lives in Barrie, wants to significantly reduce the MDS by almost 29.4 meters. 29.4 meters is wider than the width of my arena, which is 20 by 60. This is really a significant variance. It's not minor. It is not my fault that the lots, when they were created, did not comply with MDS. They could have been made a little longer, and this would not have been a problem. The application mentions a horse farm, but in the next 2 to 3 years, due to our age, we will disperse most of the breeding stock of Welsh ponies. To retain my agriculture designation, I plan to breed, and I would like to have shown for me, low-line black Angus cattle. I've always been in love with them. I ask that council considers my comments. It will be difficult to be zoned agricultural and have the MDS rules broken again for another home. The consultants and planners should have known the setback rules when they first created the lots. If the application is approved, it will affect the value of my land. I will not be able to expand any of my existing barns or operation, and any potential buyers will have significant limitations too. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council to the delegation? Nope, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Takes us to number 2 on our registered delegations, which is the Vandenbergs. Cal and Sarah. Just your address for the clerk, please.
283 East River Road.
Thank you.
I was looking at this more or less. I understand about the NDS, but when we applied for the first homes, we were well within our guidelines. And with this home in here, like everybody's saying, it is further away. And when you talk to the neighbors and the neighbors that sent in letters, what they're trying to hope is to have it all in a row. Okay, because this house is going to be further away from any of the other houses from the horse barn. And when you look at the house to the south of it, all of a sudden you're going to have a house, and this guy's going to be looking right in his backyard from the front door. And that's where he got a letter that he sent to the county too, because he's saying, look, why should I look at somebody in my backyard, look right into the front of their house with their driveway and their garage there? And that's part of the reason too that of the application to bring all these houses all in a row. It looks better, and it's not going to harm anybody either. Like everybody says, this is the furthest house away from the horse farm. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter? Comments? Concerns? No. Thank you very much. And it'll take us to number 3 in the registered delegations, and that's Justine and Chris Keithley. Keithley? Is that right? Are they here?
Hi there. Yeah, sorry, we're virtual here, and I think there was an error because we were just hoping to attend the meeting and had clarified that we weren't actually looking to speak.
Oh, Well, now that I've recognized, did you want to speak? Would you like to tell us anything?
No, we're happy to just listen in and stay up to date on this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last of our registered delegations. So this is an open meeting. So anyone from the floor that wants to come up and speak either for or against the application, come up now. Seeing none, I'll ask for the second time if there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak to or from the delegation or for the delegation. You can come up now. And seeing no one, I'll ask for the third time, is there anyone in the audience that wants to come and speak to the application or no? Okay. I'll declare the public portion of the meeting closed. Council, what do you want to do? Councillor Miller?
I'll move to receive.
Seeking a second to receive. Councillor Coleman? Any other questions, concerns? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to number 9.1, which is block 98 and 99. Dan, you're going to speak to this. First of all, I need someone to put it on the floor. Councillor Pierce, Councillor Coleman, it's on the floor. So I'll declare this public meeting now open.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a rezoning application, ZBA 4420, for a property identified as block 98 and 99. This item is being presented with a recommendation of approval this evening for the reasons outlined in the staff report. And our applicants and our agents are with us this evening who will also present following me. So this property is located Rest Acres Road, north of Power Line. The property consists of block 98, 99, approximately 0.9 hectares for block 98 and 1.5 hectares for 99. The blocks have frontage along Lydia Lane, Tom Brown Drive, Rest Acres, and Power Line. And currently these are vacant blocks within the Mile Hill Phase 2 subdivision. A little bit of background, just some approximate timelines. The application was originally submitted, received in 2020, where we did have initial information meeting with a proposal that consisted of 3 to 4 story apartment buildings, back-to-back standard townhomes with site-specific provisions, including the removal of the commercial uses currently permitted. The proposal was revised in May of 2023, and by April 2024, the revised application was received to include block 98 and 99, where the previous block did also include block 97, which is currently under construction with townhomes. In September 2024, we had our second information meeting where the proposal consisted of an 8-story apartment with back-to-back and standard townhomes, again with site-specific provisions, proposing the removal of the permitted commercial uses. And so currently in October, late October, we received a revised application. The county provided notice to the residents, is providing an update on the status of the application, and also notice of this recommendation meeting where the application has been revised to propose a maximum building height of 3.5 stories to facilitate construction of stacked towns, back-to-back and standard townhomes, again with site-specific provisions related to setbacks, coverage, and parking, as well as the removal of the permitted commercial uses. So under the current official plan, 2023, the land use designation falls within the community corridor, and these areas are intended to act as a linear focus for mixed-use development and shared space between various modes of transportation. Permitted uses do include residential, low, mid, and high-rise, institutional, commercial, office, and community uses within low and mid-rise development. The current zoning on the property was previously established. So Block 98 is the smaller block to the north, and this block has a zoning on it that currently permits a maximum height of 12 meters, permitting residential unit types, range of residential unit types with a reduced visitor parking rate. Block 99 is actually the larger block to the south, and it has a split zoning, which consists of the RM2-29 with the same site specifics I just mentioned. It also currently contains a small mixed-use commercial zone to the south, which permits commercial uses in addition to permitted residential uses. So the proposal, the approach is to create a new site specific for the entire block, or both blocks, block 98, 99, to encompass proposed land uses that can consist of back-to-back townhouses, in addition to all of the wide range of residential housing types permitted in the RM2 zone. So this includes your stacked, your standard row housing. The site-specific zoning proposed addresses or looks to establish reduced setbacks to the streets, being Tom Brown, Rest Acres, Olivia Lane, and Power Line. It also aims to permit a maximum building height for stacked towns of 13 meters, so 1 meter above the 12 meters permitted for other uses. This site-specific zoning carries over a lot of the site specifics that were previously permitted within that RM2-29 and C5-1. Again, the removal of commercial, but a lot of the site specifics are carried over from that or from the current zoning. In terms of public consultation, so as I mentioned, we have had a number of information meetings, lots of opportunity for the residents with modified proposals circulated with each. Last month, or September, we heard at the information meeting based on the 8-story proposal. We heard a number of concerns that are identified on the screen related to traffic, parking, infrastructure capacity, school capacity, building height, privacy, the type of ownership, the use and density. The circulation for this recommendation meeting, which also includes the county circulated email update with the revised proposal. We did receive less comments. A lot of the comments that we did receive were positive in the sense of reduced height, but a lot of those same themes related to traffic and parking, school capacity, density still remain. So in terms of process, this is the recommendation meeting where I have prepared a recommendation report recommending approval of the application for the reasons outlined in the report, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dan. Does council have any questions for the planner? Councillor Pearson and Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Dan. So I got a few of them here. I guess my first one is the fact that the last time we saw a proposal for these two plots of land was September, completely different than what we're seeing right now. So I'm a little surprised that we're coming with a recommendation right away when in essence, it's really the first time we're seeing it. So that's a little confusing to start. A couple of questions as we go through this thing here, and I'm just taking from your what you wrote here in regards to a couple of things. First of all, in regards to parking, you state that on and off-street parking facilities will be reviewed as part of the site plan control. I'm worried that if we go ahead and approve this, it's going to be too late at that point in time. It's already going to be approved if it goes that way. So waiting for, putting that as part of the site plan control, that's putting, as far as I'm concerned, that's putting the cart after the horse, or way behind the horse. Going a little farther, when we talk about the commercial use, as it says here, the application results in the removal of the mixed-use commercial. And then a little farther in your report, you talk about, although the application does result in the removal of the commercial use permissions, future development will be supported by existing and future planned commercial. So my question is, this particular developer saying they want to get rid of the commercial, what if the next developer says they want to get rid of the commercial? I think we're setting a precedent here that we don't want to set with the taking away of the commercial property. And then a little bit further down in there, it says the application results in the increased density exceeding the minimum density targets from the growth plan. If we were to keep the commercial, which is very much needed in this area, and they had residential above the commercial, they would still meet the numbers. So a couple questions in there. As I say, I don't know if you want to comment to the waiting for the site plan for the parking. The second one is, what do we do now for setting precedent for developers to come if they say, well, we don't want to do commercial either, we just want residential. And then again, the whole thing here is the fact of what they're doing way exceeds the numbers that we require. And I guess, just to reiterate again, just so I'm confirming this correctly, they were given because technically this was considered a complete application prior to the approval of the new official plan. So I just want to confirm that we stated to them, to this developer, that, because it's in limbo, they can go either way. I just want to make sure that, was that us saying that, or was that them saying that back to us?
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. So the first on parking, and I guess parking and the zoning bylaw amendment in general. So this, when we say something's going to be reviewed later at site plan, it will be reviewed later because that's where we review the detailed design. This stage, the zoning, establishing setbacks, minimum requirements for parking, maximum requirements for height. Those are the elements that will dictate what their design ultimately looks like. So as long as they're able to provide us with a design that meets what their zoning requirements are, the minimums and the maximums established at this point, then we will be able to work with them at site plan to determine whether or not they're meeting those minimums or maximums, and providing it in a way that is overall good design.
Okay, if I could, just a quick follow-up. So Dan, the picture that they have here, the concept of what they have here, if we look at visitors parking, for example, and we know we've got huge issues of parking around here. If we look at visitors parking, even with the 25 or 0.25 per unit, I think it's like 34 or 38 spots they have to come up with. I don't see that many spots on that diagram. So to me, if that's their submission, then they're not meeting it right off the hop. So,
and through Mr. Mayor, if that's the case, then they're not meeting that minimum, then they'll have to revise their concept.
Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you, Dan.
I can speak to the other questions. You asked about the removal of commercial. Absolutely, it would be a concern of ours to see other parcels that are already zoned and designated for commercial that are adjacent to other commercial uses to start to be removed. I think that we have to be very careful on where we are and where we aren't removing it. In this case, my staff recommendation report supports the removal in this case. I look at where the zoning for the commercial is and how it would function well, or maybe not well, with the abutting commercial. Access to that commercial property is very limited. So in this case, I feel that it is appropriate that it be removed in this case, and the applicants and their agents can provide further justification for why they feel that removal of commercial is appropriate. There are, and I believe I identified it during my information presentation, there are a lot of undeveloped commercial lands along this corridor that we will see development. Currently working through site plan applications for some of those parcels. So we are seeing a lot of interest in commercial development of those already zoned blocks within other subdivisions.
And thank you, Dan. And one final comment. Again, when you're speaking of the commercial for that for that lot 99, we'll call it. Let's not forget here that the developer, came to us for a swap for 97 because 97 was commercial and 99 was residential, and then there was a swap done there. So now, not only did we lose the commercial there, but now they're taking the commercial out of 99. So, thank you.
And just to address your last question about the official plan, the transition policies of our official plan allow the applicants to provide a submission which leverages the policies of the new official plan. So it's not a special request and a consideration. It's written in the transition policies that they are allowed to do this.
Thank you, Dan.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan. I have a couple questions as well. To start with, I was stumbling over the math a little bit, and I wanted to make sure I understand it. We know from prior conversations that our target is a minimum of 50 people or jobs per hectare, right? That's kind of the baseline. And I was looking through the math at the top of page 5 of this report, page 37 of our complete package, but page 5 of this report. It starts on page 4, but it's. I wanted to make sure I understood. So it's 152 residential units times an assumed 2.7 residents per unit plus an estimate of 8 jobs. That's 418 people divided by 2.4 acres means it's 174 people, not units, right, per hectare. And our minimum threshold or our minimum target is 50. So this is more than 3 times our minimum target. Is that, do we still call that medium density?
I'm going to look to Brandon just to correct me if I'm wrong, but the medium density would refer to the built form, not necessarily the density of persons per hectare.
Okay, fair enough.
So in this case, we're dealing with the built form, the height.
The height. And looking at and I assume this is like a preliminary site plan, that, right? Can we put this on the screen, please? Would this be considered a draft site plan or a preliminary site plan?
Yeah, if Spencer, if you have it, I know the applicants have some nicer looking graphics than what I have included, but it is conceptual as far as I'm concerned at this point.
Sure, fair enough. Okay, but and people hear the words back-to-back towns, and not everybody completely understands that, and perhaps the applicants will show us some visuals of that later, or maybe we can reference other places within the community where those exist. But within Block 99 particularly, what I see in that preliminary site plan, it does look very dense. It looks like there's a lot of families in there. Is there any plan for green space for these families within these properties?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll leave that response to the applicants and to walk you through their design.
Okay, fair enough. Last question for you, Dan, a process question I want to better understand. We're all aware of the countdown clock. Is it 48 days from, or like within the planning? Anyway, my question is, when the application changes, and we've seen this change quite a bit, and certainly this looks better than 8-story apartments. I think is more palatable to some. But how does the countdown clock work when the application keeps changing?
Fair question through Mr. Mayor. I think you asked a similar question at the information meeting in September, and my response was that it had evolved slowly or incrementally kind of before our eyes, and eventually, and you know, where it started versus where it is now is very different. You're absolutely right. Had it gone from what it was to what it is now in the first stage, we may have looked at it as a new application. The details, there's a major detail missing from this proposal that was included in the previous, which is the 8-story request. A lot of the requests remain the same, minor tweaks. They were still looking for back-to-backs. They were still looking for modified setbacks to certain setbacks and or to certain streets, modifications to the minimum unit sizes or lot sizes. So although the previous 8-story request was included, it still included a lot of these elements. So they basically took one of the lines out, and now we're left with what were proposed today.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan. I have 4 or 5 questions, Mr. Mayor. I hope you don't mind if I go through them. First one, how many dwellings did we have on block 98 and 99 in our 2019 approval?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bell, I don't think I have that information on me this evening.
So I'm interested to know whether the 152 that we talk about now is more than we had approved at that point in time. Second question, I don't understand what a 3.5-story building is. The engineer in me can't work that out. What's a 0.5 of a story?
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe the request was originally for 13 meters, and we've just converted it to be consistent.
So we've not got 3.5 floors anywhere.
Right.
Okay. All right. The rationale for recommending removal of C5-1 zoning, I struggle with, but I do notice that the community corridor designation, which is what we now have in our new official plan, does accommodate commercial accommodation and office use. So it's not inconsistent. So there's not some fundamental bust here between the new official plan and commercial zoning. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, that is correct. The commercial or the community corridor designation does allow for a mix of residential and commercial uses.
Okay, thank you. In relation to parking, I guess we have no off-street parking in this complex. Sorry, no on-street parking. Sorry, apologies.
Through Mr. Chair, the concept may provide, the current concept may provide a private road width that doesn't accommodate on-street parking. So it's something that could be worked in design, but the way the ownership would work here is that it would be a private road, and they would still be required to provide visitor parking.
But that's, I went through block 97 today. I just took a drive through. I guess it's fairly similar in how this 98 and 99 will look. The road was a sort of minimum 6-meter road.
Correct.
Which I think precludes any on-street parking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the lands, if constructed as rental or as a planned condominium, these would be private lands, so wouldn't count towards our on-street parking targets.
But isn't correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but isn't the idea if we've got 6-meter wide road, that's what you need to allow emergency vehicles to come by?
Correct. So there would be no stopping or no parking within that road. Okay.
So, just an observation from going down block 97. There is, each home has a garage and a driveway. Many of the driveways that I drove past were not big enough to accommodate a vehicle. And that's not if you like, that's not the developer's fault. That's basically what we set as a minimum standard. But we need to get practical. We need to be realistic about this. These driveways cannot accommodate typically the vehicles that we see driving around in Paris today. So the 6 meter wide road actually could potentially be down to a 5 meter wide road because these big trucks just park over the end of it. And I think that is a shortcoming, and we need to work on that as county. I would like to think the developers would see that for themselves and say, this is too small, or this garage is too small because the steps at the back of the garage mean I can't actually bring my long truck in. I can only have a mini like I've got at home. To the site plan, Dan, the site plan doesn't show any back-to-back townhomes. Is that deliberately so?
Through Mr. Mayor, again, I'll leave the detailed design, the concept, the layout to identify which footprints shown on the site plan are the back-to-backs, which are the stacked, and which are the standard. I really prefer to leave it up to the planner on behalf of Lisani to walk you through that concept.
Okay, one final question, if I may. Why do we continue to permit a continuous erosion of our zoning bylaw setbacks? In this particular case, the applicant is asking for smaller lot areas per building. He's asking for smaller setbacks. Why do we have a zoning bylaw if it's not to actually set the standard? Why should we roll over and accept these continuous challenges, not just from this particular developer, but almost every developer comes to this council and says, can I have a little bit more here and a little bit more there? With the reasoning is that they want to have more and more dwellings in there. So it goes back to my original question, Dan. Are there more dwellings now on this block 98 and 99 than we had previously assumed? I would like an answer at some point in time. Thank you.
Councillor Oakley, I see your hand there. If your hand's been up for a while, I'm sorry, I didn't look that way. So if you've been waiting, I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan and potentially Brandon. This was the topic of conversation last time as well, I believe. If you could just clarify exactly how the calculation in terms of our minimum density is meant to be used. My understanding from the last we spoke of it is that it's meant to be applied across the entire subdivision area, or alternatively, and this is where I'm not entirely clear, across the entire urban area. And thusly, it would be erroneous or potentially misleading to be applying this calculation on a per site basis. Can I get some clarification on that and how that calculation is meant to be used so we can ensure that we're using it accurately and not in an erroneous fashion?
Dan?
To Councillor Oakley, through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct. Last meeting we did, through our density discussions, we did confirm that it is a minimum target across the undeveloped area, not necessarily parcel by parcel as we may have done it in the past.
Councillor
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, Dan, thank you. And we'll call on the agent, Emily Elliott, to come up.
Good evening, Mayor Bailey and members of council. My name is Emily Elliott and I am with MHPC. We're the applicants with respect to this zoning bylaw amendment application for blocks 98 and 99 in the Mile Hill subdivision. Just like to start off by thanking Dan for his thorough staff report and presentation this evening. I'm here tonight to express my support for staff's recommendations that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application be approved. I have a brief presentation. I'll share some concepts as Dan mentioned, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have this evening. So as Dan mentioned, these lands are located in the south part of Paris in the Mile Hill subdivision. Both blocks were identified as future development blocks for multiple residential development in the subdivision and in the zoning bylaw. Block 98 is the northerly block. It's just under 1 hectare in size. It has frontage on Rest Acres Road, Lydia Lane, and Tom Brown Drive. Block 99 is a larger block. It's just under 1.5 hectares, and it has frontage on Rest Acres Road, Powerline Road, and a small frontage on Tom Brown Drive. These sites together have an area of about 2.4 hectares, and they're both can be fully serviced by existing municipal infrastructure. In terms of the surrounding context, the lands to the east also form part of the Mile Hill subdivision. There are townhouses along Tom Brown Drive and single detached dwellings. The Simply Grand subdivision is to the north. This subdivision is planned and developed with single detached dwellings, townhouses, and apartments on Block 34. The Scenic Ridge subdivision is to the west, and that subdivision includes townhouses and singles. And to the north is a commercial shopping area at the Rest Acres Road and Arlington Arlington Parkway. To the south of the site is the Brant Sports Complex and residential uses, and further south is Highway 403. Oops. Sorry, went ahead. There's a number of parks proximate to the site as well, including Mile Hill Meadows, which is to the east of the site. And the site has good access to existing multi-use trails, including one along Rest Acres Road, one along Powerline, and one along Mile Hill Road. There are, as Dan mentioned, also planned commercial uses within the area, including along the Rest Acres Road corridor. In terms of background and process, the Mile Hill subdivision has identified these lands for multiple residential development since it was draft approved and registered. And the lands were zoned RM2-29, which allowed for a variety of multiple residential building types, including stacked townhouses and townhouses. So that zoning was established many, many years ago. So these zoning bylaw amendment applications were originally brought forward in 2020, as was mentioned. And since then, there's been significant changes to planning policy, including a new provincial planning statement and a new county official plan, which was approved in May and has now, as we know, been adopted by the province. Resubmission for these blocks was filed in early 2024, and that was considered at the public meeting in September. And following that meeting, we filed a resubmission in response to feedback we heard through the review process, including at the from council and the public. So I'd also like to note that the application this evening is only a zoning bylaw amendment. It does conform to the county's official plan, and I'll discuss that more in my presentation. So I'll now take a couple minutes to go over the concept plans themselves. I will separate them out separately to be Block 98 first, followed by Block 99. So this slide shows the concept plan for Block 98. So this concept is for 3.5-story stacked townhouses that include, there's 72 units proposed and 164 parking spaces. Parking is accommodated by 2 parking spaces within the garage and 20 visitor parking spaces. And the parking does exceed the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Access to the site is from Tom Brown Drive and then an extension of a private road network through Block 99. Each unit within this block would feature private amenity space in the form of a balcony or deck. And there's also landscaped open space and green space on the site, which you can see in green there. As was mentioned, this block will be subject to site plan approval, and that process will consider the detailed design, including building design, site lighting, landscaping, waste collection, snow removal, parking locations, and all the final engineering details. The next 2 slides show conceptual renderings of these stacked townhouses. So this rendering shows what would be the front of the stacked townhouse block. And you can see that it's intended to be a well-designed building that expresses a modern architectural built form. It incorporates a variety of materials and has projections and recesses and height variation to provide visual interest. This is just a conceptual rendering, and the final design, the number of units in a row, all of that would be determined through the site plan process. And this is what would be the back of those units. So you can see here that there is a garage and a semi-covered driveway parking space for each unit. There's also a number of balconies on the site, which provides some private amenity space for future residents. And you can also here see the 3.5-story height of the buildings between the two slides. This is the concept plan for Block 99. You can see here that it proposes 3-story townhouse buildings. The block continues to be proposed for that, as was discussed in September at the public meeting. There are 80 units proposed and 187 parking spaces. In this concept on the screen, there are 2 types of townhomes proposed. They either feature 2 garage parking spaces or a driveway and a garage parking space. The final form of the design would be determined through the site plan process, however. There's also 21 visitor parking spaces on this site plan or concept plan, and that exceeds the requirements of the zoning bylaw again. In this concept, each townhouse has some private rear yard amenity space, as well as some central common amenity area in the center of the site. Site access for this block would include the extension of the private road connected to Tom Brown Drive, and then also to Block 98. Both the blocks can be serviced by municipal infrastructure, and like Block 98, this block is also subject to site plan approval, which will cover all those detailed design matters. These are now a couple conceptual renderings of Block 99. Like I said, it'll be subject to site plan approval, so these are options and will be confirmed through that process. So you can see here a 3-story townhouse. This unit type has a front door and a garage facing the private road. The built form is a modern architectural built form with a variety of building types material types, and a lot of visual interest through projections and recession. This is another option. This is the option with a double car garage and a front door on the opposite facade. So the front door would be on the front facade, and the double car garage would face the internal private road. Again, we see a modern architectural expression and high quality built form. So in terms of the official plan, I'll just go through briefly how the official plan relates to this proposal. In 2023, the official plan was approved by council, and recently it was approved by the province. The 2023 official plan includes policies to guide growth in the county to 2051. The official plan identifies that the lands are within the urban settlement area of Paris and the designated greenfield area. It was mentioned that the designated greenfield area has a minimum density target of 50 residents and jobs per hectare. This proposal exceeds that minimum target, and again, it's a minimum, by providing 174 residents and jobs, which assists the county in achieving their greenfield density target that's measured across the entire greenfield area, as opposed to on a site-by-site basis. The subject lands are designated in the 2023 OP as community corridor. This designation permits residential land uses in low-rise, mid-rise, and high-rise built forms, and those high-rise built forms do include the 8 to 10-story apartment buildings. The proposed stacked townhouses are 3.5 stories in height, and they would be considered a low-rise built form, despite that permission for high-rise being established in the OP. So the proposed development conforms to the official plan, and no amendment is required. So the subject lands are presently zoned residential multiple medium density RM2, and they're subject to a special exception, that's special exception 29. And the southerly part of the lands are presently zoned mixed use commercial, that's C5, and they're subject to a special exception. The current RM2 zoning does allow for stacked townhouses and townhouses, so we're not seeking permission to add either of those uses through this zoning bylaw amendment application. The proposal is to rezone the entire site to an RM2-29 zone, and that is a new special exception to establish regulations to support the development of these 2 blocks. As Dan mentioned, many of these regulations are carried forward from the current special exception 29. All of those are highlighted with an asterisk. So the minimum interior side yard, the minimum lot coverage, the parking, minimum landscaped open space, and a severability clause. The setbacks requested are identified as being to the adjacent roads, and partly that's for clarification. In addition to, we think that they're appropriate in terms of creating an urban profile along the street. They also help assist with clarification and interpretation of the zoning for these blocks, because they're regular sized and frontage and sidelines or side yards and rear yards aren't always so easy to interpret on blocks such as this. So it does help with clarification. In terms of the minimum lot area, currently the RM29 zone has one standard minimum lot area that applies to a lot as a whole, so not to the individual unit type. So we are asking for a minimum lot area of 170 square meters for townhouses and back-to-backs, and 120 square meters for stacks, and that's an appropriate lot area per unit. Sorry, lot area per unit, and clarifies the zoning for those as well. So to conclude, we've been through a very lengthy review process with staff, and we've worked really well to address the comments received. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy planning statement. It conforms to the Brant County official plan. The extent of the zoning bylaw amendment application is just to establish site-specific regulations for this block. It's already zoned for multiple residential development. The development supports development within the designated greenfield area. It's an efficient use of land, resources, and infrastructure on a block within a residential plan of subdivision that's always been intended for this type of use. It will also contribute to the range of housing in the community in terms of the number of units and also the type of units. And it's also a compact built form, which is encouraged by the official plan. And like I said at the outset of this presentation, we've reviewed the staff report and agree with the conclusions and request that the county approve the zoning bylaw amendment application this evening. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Does council have any questions to the presenter? Councillor Bell first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. A question you may or may not know the answer to. Lozani has built many properties in Mile Hill. Do you know how many of those properties actually use their garages for parking a vehicle?
Through the mayor, that's not a part of this application. It's not something that I have information on.
Well, I would ask that you ask your client to answer that question, because my observation, and it's pertinent to the issue of parking, my observation is that less than 50% of people actually use their garage for parking. Earlier tonight I was talking to residents of Mile Hill who live next door to somebody in a, happens to be a house that Lozani built, but that's neither here nor there. But that house has 6 vehicles, none of which go in the garage. And it may seem trivial, but when you compound that, we have a parking problem already. And if that experience translates into this new development or new subdivision, we're going to have an even bigger parking problem. And it's not something that we as councillors can readily ignore. It's the biggest bugbear, the biggest challenge we get as Ward 3 councillors, that people are concerned about how they park and the inconvenience and the dangers that it creates through people parking illegally. So I would ask that we take this seriously, that the designs that I've seen and you showed earlier, I think are just going to compound a problem that we already have, which I find difficult to be supportive of.
I think staff wants to speak to this.
Just through the mayor to Councillor Bell, I understand the comment. We new subdivisions across the province are challenging us with parking and what happens in them. We can't dictate how people use their garage necessarily. Well, we do. The zoning does speak to how they should use garages, but people don't always do that, and we can't go around enforcing that all the time. However, we will be looking at in our new zoning bylaw, obviously, to look at parking and issues. The key issue here, though, is they're not asking for parking reductions. They're looking at meeting the parking, and that would be the standard whether it's a single-family residential subdivision or not. So I think we have to take that into account, as the parking isn't the question in front of us today, because if they're meeting it, that's something we have to, as a zoning, we're going to have to address no matter what the design of the development is, whether it's back-to-back towns, stacked towns, or single families that are wide open lots. We're still dealing with them, that they have to meet the parking requirements. So just understand we're going to do our best to ensure that the parking requirements are met and looked at and considered and addressed as much as we can. The bigger issues of people parking 6 cars, I don't have an answer for yet, and I don't think any bylaw out there does, because it's a challenge.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, Jeremy, I fully appreciate that theoretical answer. I'm just going into the real world where we have a parking problem, and this is going to compound it.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Emily, just a couple questions of clarification. When you were speaking of the multi-use paths, you said there's one on Rest Acres Road, there's one on Powerline Road, and you said there's one on Mile Hill Road?
Yes, there's a trail along Mile Hill Road in your transportation master plan.
That's interesting, because there's no trail there that I'm aware of, and it's I live at the bottom of Mile Hill, and I don't walk it myself because there's nowhere to walk on that road. That's the first one.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify the number of parking spaces that you were saying. And so if we go back to the lot to lot 98, did I hear you say there's 72 parking spaces?
No, through the mayor, let me just, for block 98, there are 72 units and 164 parking spaces.
164. Okay, thank you. Now, did you say that there was 2 parking spaces in the garage, or the garage and a driveway?
Yep, and through the mayor again, that is a garage and a driveway parking space.
Okay. And then again, for the lot 99, it's 80 units with 187 spaces, correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay. So when you spoke of green space, I find it quite interesting. I'm not sure if we could put that picture back up on the board.
This one.
So we'll take this one for example, even though it kind of looks yellowishy there. We'll say also all the green is what you're classifying as green space, correct?
That's correct, through the mayor. That's
So
correct.
further on in your report, you talk about landscaped open space. Are we talking the same thing?
Through the mayor, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so what you're telling me is landscaped open space is 25% of that whole unit.
Through the mayor, this block, I believe it exceeds the minimum landscaped open space requirements in the current concept. Yes, it does.
All right, are you able to tell me the ones in the middle? Okay, fine and dandy. But are you able to tell me the ones around the outside? Do you have any idea as to how wide that green space is?
And through the mayor, these are the concepts for the stacked townhouse units. So they don't have a rear yard, so to speak. They have instead balconies and patios.
Okay, so balconies and patios, they're still considered green space?
No.
Okay, so we've got units there with no green space.
That's correct. These are more like apartments than a standard town.
Okay. One other question I have, when you spoke of the minimum setbacks from Rest Acres Road, I think you said minimum setback, you're looking for 3 meters?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Can you give me an idea, if we take lot 97, for example, the one that's under construction now, can you give me an idea of how far that is set back? Do you know?
Through the mayor, I did work on block 97. I can't recall off the top of my head what the setback is for block 97.
I'm not sure if I could put that through to staff. If anybody knows, I'm just trying to get in my head of, is it gonna be the same as that? Is it less than that?
Through the mayor, I believe it is 3 meters for block 97. I can check that. I'd also like to note that for block 99, the lot line is quite irregular. So 3 meters is the minimum. In some cases, it will be greater than 3 meters.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I wanted to start by saying I appreciate the fact that this is no longer an application for an 8-story apartment building. So I wanted to say that up front. But I do have some concerns similar to some that have been spoken before. I'll ask Spencer if he can put that presentation back up one more time. My question, similar to Councillor Pierce's, is about block 99 and green space. And I'm just, and I'm looking at this preliminary concept, and I'm going to ask you the question I was asking Dan, but I'm going to go a little bit further. If I live here and my granddaughter comes to visit and we want to throw a Frisbee around, where does that happen?
Through the mayor, certain of these unit types have rear yard, private amenity space, and there's also common amenity space central to the block, and that's a detail that we can also get into a little bit more at site plan. But the intent is there's a common amenity area, and then some of the units will have rear yard amenity as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McAlpine.
Do you have any idea of the size of the common amenity area that you're proposing?
Through the mayor, I don't have that number in front of me, but it's something that we'll confirm through the site plan process.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Because this is an open meeting, we have 2 registered delegations that can come up and speak now. Samantha Moda. Just your address, please.
So for the record, I live at 10 Edgar Place. I'm about 3 houses from the stop sign where they're going to build block 98. So everyone, thank you for hearing me again. Thank you for the mayor, the council, and my neighbors and my community members to listen to me once again with my presentation. I've been reviewing the plan, and when we got the letter in the mail, I think a lot of my neighbors were really excited. They were excited that Lissani actually, the developer, actually changed their plan. They kind of felt like they were victorious in a way. And I waited till I got the email in the mail, and I really deep dived this block 99, and you guys already got into the counselors. So we know they're going to put 72 units. My bullet 2 is very important, and I think we've already addressed this evening. Based off the unit count and the meter squared, we're going to put, it's about 130 meters squared per unit. Okay, so just keep that in mind as I go through my presentation. And they're asking for a lot of variances in this rezoning. First of all, they're asking for a height variance of 1 meter, which is 13. So I wondered what was coming there. And I really looked at this, and I can tell some of my counselors did too. I couldn't understand it at first. It took me about an hour and a half to figure it out. But I want to point out this light blue lines is the current roadway. So keep in mind all that, everyone. What they're going to do is they're going to take a portion of that roadway, put it on for some of the buildings, which we are now using the word building and apartments tonight, apartment style. And the blue arrow, so you can see it coming out in the middle, that's that meters, that's 6. That's a concern to me, because we only got 2 of those entrances to get into these lots. So block 99 and block 98. Okay, so I want to talk about the visitor parking. I don't think they're compliant right now based off the thing, because they're counting 7 accessible parkings as part of visitor parking. You need to have a permit to park there. they're only actually giving 13 visitor parking. So it's mostly on the roadway, and there's about 4 spots between the middle piece. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't think it's adequate, I think. I know we got into this. Very minimal green spaces. It's just around the block landscaping. No common use area in this particular block. What was good is they all have a garage and a parking space, and that confirmed in a conceptual design. It's going to be partial covered space in a parking space. So that was good. So everybody's going to get to that live there. Very minimal visitor though. But I want to point out to everyone, they want a variance again. They're not compliant with the front yard setback. They actually want only 40, they want a reduction of 49.9 because you guys can't tell, but there's stairs. There's a lot of green stairs. All the green is the stairs, guys. Every block is going to have stairs. And they're not compliant with their rear setback either. 52%, 0.6% will be covered by stairs again. That's in the plan. It was in the side menu. So I just want to point out what this looks like. And I've not seen this model from Lysani, the developer. And then it took me about an hour and a half to figure out what it was. And I'm kind of going to go to my next one. Before I go there, I forgot about this last bullet. We're going to use 29.3% less meter squared per unit than block 99, which I'll show you in a few minutes. So we're going to compact a lot of people in a very small space. And anybody who does live in Paris will know this is 2 Willow Street. It's the Kayak Urban Condominiums. I think this is what they're building, which was confirmed tonight by conceptual design. Might not be exactly because they're going to put peaks, but what you see in the first building, if everyone can see that clearly, this is kind of the front. So it looks like a 3-story stack, which they've said. Yeah, you can't see the garage from here. But if you look at the second building behind, you see the garages there? They're partially covered, and you can't get a big vehicle there. It's very hard to even get a truck in there. We know some of you have trucks. But again, they confirmed this just now. There's no green space. They're using the small patios that they kind of continuously use. It's being in block 97 that they're building now. Give you a little closer up what it possibly would look in the front. So there's your walkway. They're going to have to come up those stairs at the end of each building. I'm assuming based off of the stairs, you can't access your unit from your garage or your parking space. That's partially covered. You're going to have to come out, walk along the building, either direction which you're going, and use the stairs to get up to the front. So how I look at it and how it impacts me, I'm going to be looking at the 3-story from Tom Brown Road because they're going to have to drive into the back on that. So that's a little bit of conceptual. What I felt it was, I think I got it right based off the conceptuals I've seen tonight. Just want to come back to block 99. So there's just, they're going to put 72 over here, but in this larger lot, they're going to put 80. So what they're getting is about 184 meters per square unit by the math. I just wanted to point out that they're going to put 2 models. The conceptuals look a little differently than what's on their website that they're building in Hamilton right now. But I can point out to you, I think it was asked earlier, which ones we're going to have a little bit of a green space in their rear yard, right? It's those ones in green. And that's only if they use the particular Whitehaven model. The rest of the ones that are in red, I believe those are the back-to-back. There's going to be no green space at the back because there's a roadway to get into your garage. There will be a walkway in the front with stairs to go into your home. So they're proposing, based off of this conceptual, that has not changed since our September meeting, will be about 70%. Again, minimal green spaces. And they are compliant with that. I do see 0.25 visitor parking plus the 7 wheelchair parking, accessible parking. What I didn't notice on the first go around when I looked at this, they also they're not compliant with the rear yard setback only on rest acres. So those are the ones in red where it says landscaping. There's about 26 units. I think they want half of what it's supposed to be there. I think they want a 3 meter. Could be possibly what one of the councilors asked for, what they're building at block 97 right now that faces rest acres. What I could locate from the website, because they decided to put model names in their design, is the Whitehaven, just to recap to everybody who think. There's your single car garage, there's your driveway. This is what I think it's going to somewhat look for the Abbotsford. This is the back-to-back townhome. So that's where they're going to drive in. They're probably going to have a patio above that. they will have no dedicated green space. They have to use that small patio that is dedicated to them. It's about 56 units based off the design. I'm still concerned about the site elevation, regardless if it's not a building or not. They're going to be pretty high. They're, as you can see by the photo, they're I'd say a story higher than where my house starts, right at the top of Edgar Place in Tom Brown. As you can see on the one side, it's all single-story bungalows, and then we have the two-story way above ground. Their decks are about way above our 6-foot fences in our backyards, so that's the privacy concern I still have. Just to give you the visuals, I wanted to put a conceptual there. This is me standing in my driveway, and the one to the right, and the one to the left is, you know, what I can look at if I'm standing at the top of Rest Acres at the Live community. And these are the effects, like as I talked about, we got a 2-story here, we got a single-story here, but we want to put a 4-story here. So there will be an impact to privacy on that one. But I know we brought this up a couple times, but I wanted to bring this up because the only way you can get into this complex is Tom Brown. So they have to come up Power Line Roundabout, turn left, or they're going to come up Lydia and turn right. As you can see, there's 2 little entranceways, probably enough for just a single car really to get in there. Most of the people from Block 99 are probably going to use Block 98s. They're probably not going to want to drive right through it. They probably want the shortest path to their home. So I do have traffic concerns. I do have safety concerns. I have concerns for on-street parking. Between the 2 big arrows, there's only one park on one side of the road right now, and it's full. It's full because of the existing residential between those 2 entranceways, which are kind of semis and detached, but they're detached at the garage. They're not true townhomes. It's very busy there. I think this has been pointed out. There's about 152 units that they want to put in this area for these 2 blocks. I'm going to point out 68%, no rear yard, no dedicated space for them. We got minimal landscaping. I can't see the shared green spaces only on the Block 98 between the 2 building sections. I think they provide at minimum or less visitor parking. And I think to have this many houses, there should be more entrances to get into this complex. And just to keep in my time, I'm running out of time here. I've got a minute left. My concerns are transit, parking, and traffic. And I know, Mayor Bailey, I know we've really hammered this out. We just don't have a dedicated bus route. Like you go into bigger cities, you got buses, they're coming every 20 minutes, a half hour. We're kind of using like a taxi type service here because we're rural, right? We're going way too fast than we thought could be possible here, to be honest with you. We've approved a couple large buildings already. There's no grocery store. So how are they going to get there? We do have a doctor's office, we do have pharmacies, a lot of fast food, but we don't really have that other essential stuff. Parking, that's a huge issue. I'm okay that you can't park in front of my house. I'm going to hate to see when these are built where they're going to park. And they're creative ways of parking. We've already seen in Mile Hill. They're sometimes parking on their lawn. They're sometimes parking across their bottom boulevard, right? These are the stuff. And I'm very concerned about traffic. On a daily basis, if I cross at the roundabout at Arlington Parkway, I'm going to get killed. I don't know if you allow me 1 more minute or you cut me off.
I've never heard that before, so you get 1 more minute because it startled me.
Well, if you go look at our Facebook group, Mayor Bailey, one woman, I don't know if she's here today, her 13-year-old son or daughter was almost killed on a scooter 1 week ago. She wants to come and present to you guys. We need flashing lights there. I've yelled at many people. My husband is not happy when I do that. They've almost killed me on multiple occasions. I'd rather cross at Lydia or up at the other one if I do my big walks than that one. That one's the most dangerous. They think they have the right of way. And I'm hearing from my neighbors that down Tom Brown, they want to avoid those roundabouts. People are scared of them. They just don't know how to use them. They're actually using Tom Brown as a throughway to get back up to their thing, so they can miss 2 roundabouts. Because on Vic Chambers, you can get into Rest Acres again, there is no roundabout, but you can only turn onto going north. So I'm really concerned about the traffic, the kids, the school bus pickups. We have issues already. That's not a big issue for me. I don't have children, but my neighbors do, and I hear it all the time. So I think And if you come in, like the council, if you came in with a decision already, if you already have something you want to say about it, I really wish that you listen to whoever's going to delegate this evening and listen to what we're saying. And I'm just going to be an advocate. I'm not against high density. I grew up in high density housing in Hamilton. We need it. If it was subsidized, even better, because I did grow up in subsidized housing with my father and my sister. I'm not against it. I think we should plan communities around it, and we should not plop it in the middle for a profit at the end. We should go high, medium, low. You shouldn't have high to low right next to it. It's not fair to everyone around us. But thank you for listening to me today. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me extra time.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm glad that you came. The second person registered for a delegation tonight is Kevin Wilson and James Leonetti, and I believe they're on line. Is that right? They're not there? Okay, they don't seem to be there. It says they're going to be on Zoom, but I don't see their names on the screen. It is an open meeting, though. Anyone else in the audience who wants to come up to speak for or against the application, come now, please. Seeing none, I'll ask the second time if anyone in the audience wants to speak for or against the application. If you could come up now, please. And seeing none, I'll ask for the third and final time if there's anyone in the audience that wants to come up and speak for or against the application. If you could come up now, please. Seeing no new speakers, I will declare the public portion of this meeting closed. And I will go back to council and ask what you want to do with this application. It's in front of you for approval. Councillor Pierce?
I'd like a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Miller?
Just a comment on the parking. I mean, I appreciate that it is a problem now. But think about, I mean, that's just for the people that live there or visiting, but think about maybe somebody needs a new roof down the road or new furnace. You have service vehicles coming. Obviously, we don't need landscapers too many there, but anybody coming to service things, it really clogs it up. So my understanding is they're going to meet the parking requirements, but I think somewhere down the road, we really, as Councillor Bell suggested a while ago, I think we need to revisit that because, it's not good. I mean, if they're already filling up one of the streets beside it now, this isn't going to help.
Councillor Bell, and then back to Councillor Pierce.
Is this the time for comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I don't support this application on a number of grounds. Despite the theory that there are 2 parking spaces per dwelling, the reality of the situation is that's not the case. There either are too few parking spaces, but often too many vehicles. And the parking problems that this will create will compound our existing situation. My second concern is that commercial is desired, is needed in this area. It's been pointed out that there is a commercial development to the north, that there may be one to the south. But I came to Canada and realized what a convenience store meant. I understood that it's convenient. And there's nothing convenient in this development or in this whole subdivision. This is an opportunity to provide that commercial centre and complete the community as we are trying to do. That's one of our desires, to have complete communities. And thirdly, I oppose, and it's not particular to this application because I've said the same in previous ones, I oppose the continuous erosion of our zoning bylaws in respect of minimum standards and setbacks. And it's all done ultimately in the interests of maximising commercial return on the part of the developer. It is not done in the interests of our community. Let's go back to the previous discussion we had, item 8.1. A thread there, core thread, was let's have some consideration for the existing residents. There's no consideration in this development, in this proposal, for the existing residents. I do not support it.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't support this either for a few of the reasons that Councillor Bell had stated. When we speak of the getting rid of the commercial, I am absolutely not in favor of that at all. I think we're setting a precedent here that's going to come back to bite us. We've heard loud and clear from the folks in this area that they need more commercial. The original plan, excuse me, was to have commercial with residential on top. If in fact they continued to do that, we would still meet our targets. With what's happening now by getting the proposal of getting rid of the commercial, we are exceeding our minimum density like threefold. I don't think that's necessary. Again, I don't want to repeat everything, but I too believe firmly that this is going to exacerbate a very serious parking issue that we already have. And I'm really, really concerned with the lack or almost non-existent of any green space. There was a couple things that were brought up tonight. You know, sure there are parks around there, but there's a, you know, within the facility itself, we're talking, you know, almost 2.5 hectares, I think, a little over 2.5 hectares. There's really nothing to do in there without either playing on a street within the compound itself or going on one of the other streets. There's nothing there that, as Councillor Howe said earlier, to throw a frisbee or throw a baseball or do anything like that. I understand that it, you know, all along there's been, you know, potential of back-to-backs going there. I don't have a problem with that. I just think that they're trying to cram too many in here, lack of green space, and it's I just can't support the rezoning of it as requested.
Any other questions, concerns? I have a couple of things to say. I'm not really too upset about no green space. In certain parts of this development, I can't support the application, by the way, and I really feel badly because I hate voting against staff recommendations, but it's not right. The presenter came and showed us all the elevations, and it needs to be one or the other. It can't be both. It's not fair. It's not fair to be able to see into someone else's yard. I don't think that everyone has a grandchild and needs to have a frisbee. I hope someday that I don't have to have any green space and I can live on a balcony. The Royal complex right down here across the road, there's a waiting list for those units, and they're $1.5 million. So there is a market for people that don't need to have grass, that like to live on balconies and terraces. So that part doesn't bother me, but it's all the other things that bother me. It's just, as Councillor Bell said, it's the parking. Our parking is just crazy. And I wish development didn't seem so greedy. I'm not against development. I truly am not against development. It has to happen. But it seems greedy. I wished it didn't sound exactly like what it is. I'm glad that Ms. Toda came and showed us her slides, put everything into perspective for me. I really do. I appreciate staff so much, and I do appreciate all the work that they go to. But I have some problems, issues of the way things are seeming to me and feeling to me. Councillor Oakley, I didn't see your hand again before I started to rant. Please let us know what you're thinking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually put my hand up after you started talking, so no worries. I just wanted to share my thoughts. I will be voting for this application. I'm personally disappointed that it's no longer the 8-story iteration. I think it's a housing product that we desperately need. I think it's the unit types we desperately need, and it's where we've designated it should go in our official plan. So I think that's a misstep for our community as we go forward. In terms of the park and commercial areas, I mean, growing up, I lived on Kelly Court. Growing up, I lived on Amelia Street, and commercial and park area is no further away on this particular lot than I experienced at either of those two locations. And I think it's more than there's more than enough within the area, not to mention the major feature park that's going to be built within the next couple of years in that area as well. So I mean, I'm in favor of the development. I'm a little reluctant to let go of that commercial. Despite that, I do think it would have been a benefit, but given our staff recommendation, and the other commercial that will be approved, or not will be approved, that is being developed nearby. I'm confident that there will be enough commercial in the area, so I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. The clerk has just let me know that Kevin Wilson is trying to connect. He is a registered delegation, so he deserves the right to speak. Is he here yet? Yeah, no, and the public meeting's been closed. So again, before we call the vote, I don't think there's anything else to say. Is everyone's good? Councillor Kyle?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do share many of the concerns that some of my colleagues and we've heard from some of the public tonight. Although I do agree with Councillor Oakley's sentiment in that this is housing that we do desperately need. I think in terms of parking, the fact that this application is proposing to meet the parking requirements, I think if we have issues with parking, that's something we need to address separately from the application, and perhaps that's something that we can do with staff separately, because we can't continue to penalize applications that come through that are meeting our requirements when those are the requirements. If we don't like that, we have to change that another way. I think I agree with the mayor's assessment in terms of folks that are purchasing these are not purchasing them expecting to have big yards. They're purchasing more of an apartment style lifestyle. So I don't think that anyone would be surprised if they're touring through them to see that they don't have a lot of space, because that's the type of housing that they are. I recognize that folks that have built their single family homes in the area, perhaps this is backwards, but I think we also have to recognize that the designation on these properties was set a long time ago. So I feel for them if they do feel that perhaps they misunderstood what would be there. But I think we can't go back and change that now. I think we do need to move ahead, because I know one of the folks talked about transit, and the one way to get transit is to have density where we can bring the transit to effectively and cost efficiently. So I will support this application for some of those reasons, and that I do agree with the staff's assessment in this case.
Councillor Miller?
That sounds nasty. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm going to vote in favor of it. If we do turn it down, it goes to the LLT. We know what happens there. We spend money, we lose it. We've lost control over the thing completely. So I would rather keep it within house. At the same time, the concerns that have been brought forward, I don't want to lose focus on those as far as the parking goes, the transit goes. If we don't learn lessons from this, then we really don't deserve to be here. So, like I said, I'd like to take a lot of those comments, make sure staff works with them in the future, and use them to do a better job, I guess, at what we do as far as planning goes.
Anyone else? We've had a delegation tell us how unsafe they feel going through a crosswalk or a traffic circle to get conveniences. And the original application had conveniences without having to go across something that makes you uncomfortable and it seems dangerous to you. Just because we put in roundabouts doesn't mean everyone's comfortable with them. I know a lot of people that aren't comfortable with them, and they may have bought their properties knowing that there was a component to the new build that was going to be convenient. Hopefully you can get a loaf of bread or some milk or a pizza or something without having to battle a roundabout in a highway that's bigger than it needs to be. I don't see our person, Mr. Wilson, here, so we don't want to open the meeting back up anyway. If there's nothing else to be said, we're going to call the vote. It's going to be a recorded vote. Spencer's going to call, the clerk's going to call a recorded vote, and we'll see what happens.
Through your worship, I'm just going to call upon each council member if you can confirm your votes, yes or no. Starting with Councillor Kyle,
Yes.
Councillor McAlpine,
Yes.
Councillor House,
No.
Councillor Oakley,
Yes.
Councillor Bell,
No.
Councillor Pierce,
No.
Councillor Miller, Councillor Coleman,
Yes.
Councillor Garneau,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
No.
That is 6 votes yes, 4 notes no. The motion carries.
Thank you. 5-minute recess. Takes us to 9.2 on the agenda, which is 1024 Rest Acres Road, and Dan's here to speak to it. I need a mover to get on the floor, Councillor Pierce and Councillor Coleman. And it is now declared an open meeting. And Dan, you're going to speak to it first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No formal presentation this evening. This is a zoning bylaw application to extend a temporary use for an additional 3 years. The temporary use is a sales trailer that currently exists at 1024 Rest Acres Road for the Scenic Ridge subdivision. This was presented for information purposes back in October, and the staff report does provide some visuals for you. I believe Councillor Bell asked a question about the entrance previously, and that was the entrance was relocated as part of the previous extension of the temporary use. So it is functioning well, and we are recommending of the approval of the extension of the temporary use. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Is there any questions for Dan about the extension for 3 years of the sales trailer? Seeing none. Thank you, Dan. Is someone going to come and speak? I'm sorry, Councillor Pierce?
Nope.
No. Someone going to come and speak on behalf of the agent? No.
Good evening, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Stephanie Murdich.
I didn't see you there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good evening. Stephanie Murdich here with MHBC as the planner on the file on behalf of LIV this evening. Similar to Dan, no formal presentation on my end. We were here back in earlier this fall for information purposes. The application is to extend a temporary use for the existing sales trailer for a period of 3 years at this time to allow for the continued sales to occur out of that space for the remainder of the subdivision. I'm happy to answer any questions from council if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you for hanging around and speaking to us.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak for or against this proposal to extend the building for another 3 years? Seeing none, I'll ask for the second time. Is there anyone here that wants to speak for or against the application for the extension of 3 more years? Seeing none, I'll ask for the final time. Is there anyone here that wants to speak to or against the application with the 3-year extension? Seeing none, I'll call the public part of the meeting closed and call the vote. Council, what do you want to do? Councillor Pierce?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, seeking it. Seconder, I have it. Seconder, Councillor Bell. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the extension? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Uh, 9.3, which is 8th Concession Road. Dan, that's you again. If I can get someone to put it on the floor. Councillor Howes, Councillor Garneau. It's on the floor. I'll declare the public meeting open. And Dan, if you want to speak to the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a presentation for this item, which is being pulled up now. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application for a property located along 8th Concession. And I believe the owners and the agent are with us this evening. This application is being presented with a recommendation of approval for the reasons outlined in the staff report. The property is identified in blue on the screen. It's approximately 17 hectares, currently vacant. The property is located within the urban settlement of Burford. I'll just note that I am showing the previous official plan. This application was deemed complete under the previous official plan and is being assessed under the previous official plan. So currently designated urban residential. The zoning is currently agricultural. The application proposes to rezone a large portion, actually rezone the entire property from agricultural to suburban residential. the portion highlighted with the larger portion that it doesn't have the red hatching through it, we're proposing to apply a holding provision, recognizing the future development potential that that portion does have, and the applicants wish to focus on further lot creation within the red hatched area, which will be facilitated future consent applications. So this application was originally presented for information purposes back in September. It was targeting the October meeting where we noticed an error in the notices. It did not include all the properties that it should have, so we pulled it from the October agenda. We've corrected the circulation for this meeting, and I have not received any correspondence from any members of the public. So as I mentioned, this is a recommendation of approval for the reasons in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions to Dan? Councilor Pierce?
Thanks, Mayor, through you to Dan. So the portion that wants to go from agricultural to suburban residential, is that like about potentially 3 or 4 lots severed off there? 3, 4?
It's approximately 1 hectare in size, so it does have potential for multiple lots. In this case, if this lot creation will move ahead of any servicing solution in Burford, it would be required to be proposed, or the development would be facilitated on private services. So they would, and we are reviewing feasibility of private services on any future lot creation. So making sure that we can create additional lots here on private services that will not impact negatively abutting wells.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact of looking at this as a whole holistic view there. Just one further question if I could. So where it's got, I guess it's, what is it, lot 70 and lot 68, were those previously taken off of this parcel of land?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't believe they were.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Dan. Dan, and I mentioned this previously, but how do you get it into the record? That my concern is in 4 years' time, another planning committee sitting around. We see an application, more lots coming along the 8th, and eventually all the lots along the 8th are taken, and there's no option to look at possibly a transportation corridor from the industrial park to the 8th concession. So how does one get one's concerns on record so the next time this comes up that can at least be looked at? Because like it would be, I think it's a good idea, talk to people, but again, if we go ahead and, like you say, fill in all those lots along the 8th concession, that removes that option. And maybe it never happens, I don't know, but I don't want to remove that option.
Through Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, you're looking for future development of these lands or maybe adjacent lands to provide a future road connection north into the, was it towards Bryan Drive?
Bryan or Albert Judge Drive, yeah. It could be north or it could be south if you're looking the other way, but yeah, north-south road.
Just, I guess, generally we would be, typically the development, unless we have an opportunity to review everything holistically through, the Burford Master Servicing, if it's looking at an element like traffic and they identify that, generally somewhere here, we'd like to see a north-south connection from 8th concession to Bryan Drive. Maybe that's something that a study like that could be looked at to identify that we would like to establish that, and then we'd wait for some developments to come online to say that this is a good opportunity for us to be able to get that connection that was previously identified in the higher level study. So that would kind of be the opportunity where through secondary planning or something else where we can identify the need or the desire. Through this application or through the development of this parcel alone, it would be difficult because we're only dealing with one of those pieces.
Okay, but again, my concern is not that, we won't go and develop the whole property, we just keep piecemealing off along the 8th, that's my concession. And if you look at a map, you'll see if they come out onto the 8th, they will and go say to Maple Ave or Bishopsgate, they'll go past, maybe 7 residential homes, whereas when they travel there now, they'll go past 100 homes, right? So it makes sense. So like I said, I'd like it kind of somehow in the record that that's something that's looked at.
We'll take that comment back and we'll keep it on our minds.
That's all I can do. Thank you.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan. Dan, just a quick question. So the proposal is to rezone the whole property, but to put a holding provision on everything but that little section, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with the holding provision, to Councillor Miller's point, does that kind of basically say you can't do anything at all with that property until we've done our master servicing and decided it's okay to lift that provision?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything? Comments? No. Okay, thanks, Dan. And the agent is here, I believe, Scott. Yeah. Hello.
Your worship, can people hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So thanks for having me, Scott Plandre with G2Oaks Valley Consulting. I have no formal presentation to provide for this application. I think just to address the last questions there from council, yes, so the holding provision would prevent any future development. Should at this time there's no intent from the applicant to develop anything further on the larger parcel, but should any development come forward in the future, the holding provision would basically require the plan of subdivision process, which by then or by there the county could request road connections along the 8th, and so the holding provision does address those concerns. Other than that, we agree with the recommendations in the report. We are working through the technical side of the hydrogeological study with a consultant and the county's peer review consultant to ensure, like Dan said, that there won't be any negatively impacted wells in the area from the proposed 2 lots. And I think one of the first questions there was regarding how many lots are going to go into that hashed area. The intent is for 2. It is for the 2 daughters of the owner of the lands, and to ensure the minimum lot size has to be rather large to support the septic systems. So that's the 2 reasons why there will only be 2 proposed lots in that hashed area. Other than that, I can answer any other questions council may have.
Does council have any questions for Scott? Seeing none. Thank you. Because it is an open meeting, I'm going to ask people that are still here if they'd like to speak to the application. Seeing no one, I'll ask for the second time. Is anyone here to speak to the application? Seeing no one, I'll ask for the third and final time. Is there anyone here that wants to speak to the application? Seeing none, we will declare the public part of this meeting closed, and I will ask council what they want to do. Yep, it's on the floor. It's seconded. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to number 10, which is consent items, and we don't have any. 10.2 is consent items to be received. We don't have any. Committee reports. We have the Agriculture Advisory Committee, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move by myself, second by Councillor Kyle, that the minutes of from the October 6th, 28th meeting, 2024 be approved.
Any questions to Councillor Coleman on his report? Councillor Coleman.
I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, we did discuss the application on East River Road quite thoroughly. The committee felt that there was maybe a little lack of information and lack of maps and a whole lot of other little things. So that's why the decision was deferred and to come back at this next meeting.
Okay. Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm not sure to staff or the councillors who sit on Ag Advisory, but I noted under other business, the committee had a discussion regarding diversified on-farm use, and I just wondered if someone could elaborate on kind of what was discussed and if any concerns were raised.
Councillor Coleman?
I didn't quite catch all that.
Okay, she'll do it again for you.
Yes.
I thought you would.
Yes. Under other business, there's a note that says that discussion was held regarding on-farm diversified use and the enforcement of the requirements. And I was just looking to understand more about what was discussed and how things are going forward.
Councillor Kyle.
Councillor Kyle.
I think Brandon's over here, so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that had to do with some questions about maybe neighbors and whether or not they had businesses that complied or something to that effect. But Brandon maybe has the answers.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So the discussion was about a bit of the policy framework, and they wanted to kind of understand how property owners would be held to the requirements of their on-farm diversified use if there was a site plan in place, and the impacts, whether it be positive or negative to neighbors, to kind of understand that. So a take back for staff is to kind of look at that framework a bit more and make some changes that way.
Yep, you're okay. Any other questions about the report for Councillor Coleman? Seeing none, call the vote to accept the report. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Takes us to number 12.1, which is the new official plan, and Brandon has that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. So I'm not doing a formal presentation on this report. There's quite a bit in it, so I expect there to be a few questions. But just as a high-level summary for everyone's benefit, now that we have the plan in place, approved by council and approved by the province, we're looking to implement. The policy is only as good as its implementation. So there's a number of projects that we're looking to move forward with pretty quickly. Some in-house, some with some assistance from consultants. And hopefully we'll address some of the concerns that we've seen tonight, but we've experienced over the last little while as well with planning applications. So I'm happy to address any questions that council has, but just to speak kind of broadly about the secondary planning piece, we've heard a bit about that tonight. So we're looking at doing a lot more of that. We need to zoom in a bit more than our OP. It's very general in some instances, and it will be helpful to have an understanding of things like servicing, things like transportation networks, and that's stuff that our secondary planning exercises will be able to help with. We'll coordinate with the infrastructure requirements in areas and kind of be able to hold certain areas for development, phase it properly. There's a lot of kind of high-level organizational things behind secondary planning, benefits to it, so we're looking at moving forward with a number of those in strategic locations. But I'm happy to answer any questions that council has.
Okay, can I get somebody to put it on the floor so we can talk about it? Councillor Bell and Councillor Kyle. Are there questions for Brandon? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Brandon. A couple of comments and a couple of questions. One comment, I'm happy to see that the Paris East and Eastern Bypass study has actually made it into this decade. It was earlier in 2041, so I think we've made progress there. That's good news. On the fifth page of your report, you talk about the Flats, Upper Town and Paris Junction neighbourhoods to be determined in terms of timing. And you say then that until all these studies are complete, large development projects will be considered premature. So thinking about the Walker Press building as one example in the Flats, are you saying that's on hold until this is done?
Through the mayor, so that is a great question. There are some developments that we're aware of. There's an opportunity to apply holding provisions in that aspect. We'll have those conversations with those developers probably on a case-by-case basis. The struggle is being kind of in between implementation of the official plan and the old plan, right? So we're looking at putting measures in place to hold back some level of development, but not get in the way of it. So to answer your question more clearly, in order to hold it, it would be more proactive for us to put zoning restrictions in place in some of the larger parcels. We can look at that. That's part of our kind of preliminary review of these things. But until that time, we'll just have to kind of go as a discussion with what we think is appropriate based on the objectives of the plan.
Okay, thank you for that one. Final question. You talk about a community planning permit system, which sounds to me like you're blowing up zoning bylaws. And I find that will be a huge communication challenge. I mean, it's taken me 6 years to understand zoning bylaws, and I'm not sure I'm there all together anyway, but for the average resident, they're familiar with the concept of zoning bylaws, they understand it, they can refer to it. Are you turning it on its head and bringing a completely new system that people will have to get used to?
Through the mayor, so interesting question to unpack. It is turning it on its head, but we are well aware of the fact that zoning is probably the most familiar planning tool to people. We expect to do a lot of education. You will likely see us interchangeably using the words zoning with the community planning permit system, because really a community planning permit system is zoning and site plan. It's those two tools combined into one thing. So there is that component still of zoning in it. But again, it's kind of a confusing thing. I understand that with the terminology and planning speak and that. So we will do our very best to translate that to the public. But we do think that this tool, this new system of approvals will get to the objectives and concerns that the public has expressed over the last little while more effectively than just a zoning bylaw and just a site plan control bylaw separately.
So as a follow-up question for me, Mr. Mayor, does that mean that the comprehensive zoning bylaw update that we typically have following a new official plan is not going to be conducted?
Through the mayor, so we are reviewing that we would essentially be taking our site plan control bylaw and our zoning bylaw. We would do the full review of both of those and convert them to this new system. So we're creating a new tool out of our old tools. The idea, though, is that there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more actual teeth in a community planning permit system that we do not have in zoning or site plan. So we're trying to take the benefits of that system. It will definitely be a learning curve for staff as well. It's not widely used in Ontario, but it's starting to become very popular, and part of that is because of the provincial changes that have been made to both zoning and site plan control. They have not been made to the community planning permit system.
Final question. So do you have a timeline for this? And if you do you have enough resources to do it within that timeline?
Yes, through the mayor. So our timeline right now is we're aiming for 2 years. We have to get it done in 3. So we're giving ourselves 2 years. We have resources to get some external assistance with it. We have a great policy team, but we are not wildly familiar with the tool, so we will definitely be leveraging that. And if we find the need for additional resources, we can come back and chat with council. But at this point, we've done the budgeting. We're looking forward to it.
Any other questions for Brandon? Councilor Miller?
Thank you. Just a question on the maps there, Brandon. Conduct comprehensive studies. So you're looking to align land use and infrastructure needs with our growth management strategy and capital budgeting. And that's over a 10-year period. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if I look at, say, the maps there, Scotland, Oakland, it just looks like the comprehensive plan area is just along Oakland Road. Am I reading that correctly?
Through the mayor. So there is a bit of a visualization issue with some of them, but the intention is that it covers both settlement areas and along Oakland Road. This area has already been established through the Master Environmental Servicing Plan that's being undertaken. There's a bit of kind of a hatching crossover in a couple.
Okay, so most of that whole area is okay. Yeah, that's what I thought, because there's the studies going on. If I look at the Burford map, and I apologize for focusing on Ward 4, but you got some of it hatched. It looks like I don't even know you got hatched, and a lot of it's yellow. Now, is the whole area? Is that the same thing there, or what am I looking at?
Yes, through the mayor. So the intention is that the entirety of the settlement area boundary is hatched, including some extra areas that are kind of in between areas right now. Because realistically, we want to look at the viability if someone asks us to bring it into the settlement area, especially with the new PPS. We want to have looked at that.
Would you look at going back to what we talked about on the 8th concession? Would you look at some transportation routes that?
Yep, absolutely. So it's part of the secondary planning exercise, and probably an additional component to the kind of ongoing EA in Burford. We'll tackle on that transportation piece and work through that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, the direction is in front of us to let staff carry on. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 13 is communications. We have none. Resolutions. We have none. Other business. We have two. Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just kind of two good news things that I wanted to share. So the first one, I was down at the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair last week, and there was lots of Brant County residents who were participating in different ways at the Royal. But one I wanted to call particular attention to is our local Brant County Ag Awareness Committee and their Bite of Brant program, which received an Excellence in Agriculture Award from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. So they were recognized for promotional excellence. So I think that's a testament to that program. I think everyone here has probably had a chance to attend Bite of Brant over the years, and Jean Emmett and her team do an excellent job. So I just wanted to do a little call out for that. And then the other one, well, it's fresh in our minds. This morning, Councillor Oakley and I had the opportunity to host a grade 6 class from Hope Reform Christian School. So they came into council chambers and we organized a mock council meeting for them to participate in. So the kids were super excited. They elected a mayor. Mayor Aaron did an excellent job in the mayor's chair. She kept control of the meeting pretty well. I was quite impressed. But what we did is in our mock agenda, we had some items that were typical of the types of decisions that we would have to make around this table. So the idea was to try and teach the kids a little bit about what we do at council. So I thought it was interesting the decisions that our mock council made. So I thought I would share that. So the group turned down the rezoning of a school to allow for a trampoline park, which we thought was quite interesting. We thought that'd be a no-brainer for them. But apparently it was not fun enough. So Councillor Oakley, who was standing in as our applicant, he needs to make his application a little bit more fun to get them on board. They also turned down a 6-story apartment building in St. George, but not for the reasons that other residents are turning down apartment buildings. It was just that they didn't like the fact that there was 3 houses that had to be removed and those families would have to move even though they had sold the houses already. So that was interesting. They approved increasing the budget to maintain the current waste collection services. So the options were to cut the budget or cut services. We had to take out yard waste pickup, or we could increase the budget a little bit to keep services the same, or we could increase the budget a fair bit and add green bins, and they picked the middle option, so that was good. They turned down the proposal to give our snowplows names. We thought like, oh, that'd be a fun one, kids would like that. Nope, it was a waste of money, so we're like, okay. But the most interesting one was a very lengthy debate on backyard chickens. And our grade 6 council approved backyard chickens, but not only that, one of the young gentlemen, he spoke up and he said that his family is larger. The idea was 4, he could have 4 chickens, and his family was bigger than that, and that wouldn't give them enough breakfast eggs. So he thought they had to have up to 30. So they amended the proposal and they approved backyard chickens with a maximum of 30 chickens for every residential property in the county. So not sure we're quite ready to let them take on control of things, but they were awesome. It was a really good group. I think they learned a lot. I got a nice follow-up email from the teacher. So big thank you to Gary, who had the mics going. They got to use the mics and sit in all the chairs. They elected the mayor, like I said, and then we had councilors, we had key staff people, we had people who came up and spoke as members of the public. So it was a really fun exercise, and I'm hoping maybe they'll inspire some other classes to maybe do the same and learn a little bit about how local government works. So just wanted to share that since it was just this morning. And Councillor Oakley, I don't know if you have anything to add, but it was a lot of fun.
No, I don't have anything in particular to add, but yeah, I think it was a fantastic experience for the kids, and I think we both had a lot of fun in helping organize it as well.
Thank you. I didn't say that I had anything to add, but I do have something actually. I attended a gala this week, and it was for a pediatric hospice that's going to be built for kids that are dying, or it's going to be in Dundas, but it's going to be a regional thing. It's going to support Brant and Hamilton and Dundas and Ancaster. But the impressive part of the evening, it was a full house at the Hamilton Convention Center. It was a 5-mayor event. It was Mayor of Hamilton and Milton and me, and there was Brantford was supposed to be there too, and others. But one of our own paramedics, Andrew Wood, was mentioned and applauded for a program that he's put together. He's one of our own paramedics in Brant, and I didn't know about it, so maybe some of you know about it. It's a program that he takes into hospice when people are too weak to get out of bed, and it's a program that he puts in place, and it takes them places. It takes them back home again. It takes them to Tim Hortons, or it takes them down the street to see where they came from, or to see their neighbor's house or something. And it got huge applause and huge support from everyone at the convention center. So I think shout out to Andrew Wood, and I spoke yesterday at the Remembrance Day parade to the paramedics, and I hope that we can do something for Andrew, because it's a huge thing. And obviously he was there because it's going to be adapted to the new kids hospice that's going to be built in Dundas. It's called the Johnny's Golden Ribbon Campaign. So I just shout out to him. I didn't know it existed, the program. I was very impressed, and I was very moved, and I think we should be very proud that he's from the county of Brant. Seeing anyone else have anything to add? Councillor Miller?
Just if I could, through you to Jennifer Kyle. Is it grade 6 where they got the civics?
No, so grade 5, I think, curriculum is where they first are introduced to government. So then they had done a tour down at Queen's Park, and then decided they wanted a tour here. We only have this as council chamber, so it's not really an elaborate tour like when you go to Queen's Park. So then we put together this program for them. But yeah, so it was kind of a follow up to their grade 5 unit, and then in grade 10 they do civics and careers.
Grade 5, yeah. Just I think that was a great idea. I did a lesson for, I think it was grade 6 or 7 at one time, and you know, if you got a problem with your garbage, who do you call? If you got a problem with military war or war overseas, who do you call, and stuff like that. So you broke it down that way. But yeah, I think it's great whenever we can get out there and you see. They don't know.
There you go. Anything else? Takes us to number 16 in camera. We don't have to go in camera. Takes us to 17, which is bylaws, and Councillor Garneau has those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And noting that Councillor Kyle's conflict is with the third reading of the drainage bylaw. We'll do 1 and 2 and then split 3. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that the bylaws 104-24, 107-24, 110-24, and 114-24 to 116-24 be read a first time.
All those in favor of the first reading of the bylaws? Second reading, please, Councillor Garneau.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine, the bylaws 104-24, 107-24, 110-24, and 114-24 to 116-24 be read a second time, and all preambles and clauses adopted.
Are there any questions to the second reading of the bylaws? Seeing none, Councillor Garneau, if you could do the third reading, please.
All right, so we'll do the bylaw 104 moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that bylaw 100-24 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor of the third reading of the bylaw? Okay.
And then again, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, the bylaws 104-24, 107-24, 110-24, and 114-24 to 116-24 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
Any questions for the third reading? All those in favor? Oh, I can't ask that. No questions for the third reading. All those in favor? Thank you. Anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Councillor Pierce.
Mr. Mayor, if you would indulge, and if the committee would indulge just with what Spencer, I just sent you something in regards to that. I was sent it's a YouTube thing, and it's all about municipal governments, and it's the way to help kids understand which, you know, as part of municipal government, who's responsible for what, like Councillor Miller was saying. If committee would indulge, it's quite humorous. If we could we play that on the thing? I think committee would really like it, and it is for the betterment of the county, because teaches kids what's what. It's 4.5 minutes.
All right.
It's 2.5 hours. Yeah. I think you'll really like it. Oh. Can I just send it to you?
Can you hum it?
Gary, what's your? How come I can't? I appreciate committee's indulgence here. It was sent, Gary. I just think it's very fitting for what the conversation was just all about.
Yep. Spencer has it.
It's a neat little wrap.
Yep.
And we'll get it up on the screens. Perfect.
Garbage is not a provincial responsibility either. It's a municipal responsibility. Canada has 3 main levels of government, and they are each responsible for different areas. All these different levels of government. It's so confusing. I just want to know. Who does what? Who does what? I really want to know. Who does what? That's what I'm going to show ya. I'm not just talking to you, but in fact to all of ya. Gonna explain that the federal government in Ottawa is important. They're in charge of our national security. This includes defense and the military. Canada's often dealing with other nations, so they are in charge of international relations. You say you want to become a Canadian? Then go talk to citizenship and immigration. They're also in charge of the money, the banking, and the copyright letter redemption, but they also take care of the postal service. You want to learn more? I only scratch the surface. Curious, and I keep on listening up. Gonna tell you more about who does what. Now the problem is, they are different situations, got their own responsibilities as a part of this nation, because this country is so big and costs too much for the federal government to take care of it all. So they split some things up, big games, big one area, school and education are provincial, don't you know? Dig a little deeper and you will see that healthcare is also a provincial responsibility.
And I appreciate committee's indulgence on that. I think it was fitting with what was said before.
I think it's great. I think it's great. You can send that to me, Spencer, please.
Who does what?
Who does what?
And sorry, provincial was health care delivery, was it? Provincial?
If you could send it to Councillor Bell too, please. Okay, number 18 on the agenda is the next meeting, which is going to be November the 26th at 6 o'clock. And I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor